What is the most stupidest way you've heard someone die? A few years back, some guy tried to kill his girlfriend by parking the car on the tracks and jumping out of the car. The train came and hit the car. Car spins around and hits the guy. Guy dies, girl survives. That is some kind of karma slap back and poetic justice right there. Steve Jobs had a very treatable form of cancer, but decided to try and cure it with an all-fruit diet. Literally, all he had to do was go to the doctor when it was discovered, and his chances of survival would have been quite good. Edit. He had a pancreatic cancer called insulinoma, which is curable with surgery. This is a highly underrated submission. The guy had plenty of money to get the best possible healthcare in the world, and just chose, nah. Until it got real serious, then there just happened to be a liver available to transplant right away. Dumbass rich asshole, and the only type of pancreatic cancer that has a decent prognosis. The worst part of it is that he had pancreatic cancer. The pancreas is what allows us to process sugar via the creation of insulin and other chemicals. So, he stressed the organ that had cancer by eating an all-fruit diet, which is very high in sugar. An all-fruit diet can damage a healthy pancreas, never mind a cancerous one. While Ashton Kutcher was playing Steve Jobs for a movie, he attempted to follow Jobs' all-fruit diet and was hospitalized with pancreatitis. It's so weird that he tried to go with that route of treatment. He was known for having been a fruitarian earlier in life, and he left his first job at Atari in order to visit his guru in India. But I figured those hippie days were behind him. He owned many exotic cars, and of course, as the head of Apple, he should have been the furthest from a tech Luddite. I'll never understand how he was so pro-innovation, but when it came to his own health, he's like, well, modern problems require caveman solutions. I saw one on YouTube of this guy who had to do community service after some small crime he did. But he didn't want to do that, of course. So his brilliant idea of how to get out, it was tying 2 pillows to his back, and his friend shot him in the back, thinking the pillows would protect him just enough to where he would get injured, but not life-threatening. Yeah, he died, and his friend was charged with murder. Gary Hoy, January 28, 1954. July 9th, 1993, was a Canadian lawyer who died when he fell from the 24th floor of his office building at the Toronto Dominion Centre in Toronto, Ontario. In an attempt to prove to a group of prospective articling students that the building's glass windows were unbreakable, he threw himself against the glass. The glass did not break when he hit it, but the window frame gave way, and Hoy fell to his death. Edit my new highest-rated comment. He landed on a metal park bench. The bench, that was bent somewhat by his fall, remained on that spot for over a year before the city replaced it. Yes, I remember that. Apparently, he would do it often, especially when new people were hired. It was like his trick until it wasn't. It wouldn't surprise me if every time he did this, chose the same window with a frame that could withstand 1 or 2 hits, but not all of them. Archie did that stunt many times, which weakened the frame, causing it to fail on the day he died. Yeah. The irony being that him doing that trick over and over is what eventually made it happen, even though it normally wouldn't. Paying $250,000 to go to the bottom of the ocean in an unregulated fiberglass capsule. Yes, it's rare. On the opposite end, many people die each year when they pay $50,000. Edit, I may be wrong about the number, to wait in a queue while their bottled oxygen runs out at the top of Mount Everest. 17 people died in 2023. Guy was killed in South Carolina this past 4th after putting a lit firework on his head and letting it go off. 4 guys died this way this year. 4! Fireworks are going to end up having warning labels. Do not light while on head. They won't read it, but it will be there. That idiot who had his girlfriend shoot him point-blank range with a 50 cal handgun while he was holding an encyclopedia book in front of his chest so they could go viral. How on earth did 2 adults think that would work? She didn't want to do it. You can Google the video. She seemed like a doormat, scared of saying no to him. That one of 3 morons that taunted the Siberian tiger at the San Francisco Zoo. God, I still can't believe they euthanized the tiger for this. Well, that rustled my jimmies. Now I want justice for that tiger and Harambe. In 1989, a kid was eaten by a polar bear at the Prospect Park Zoo in New York City after jumping into its pool to cool off during a heat wave. This kid was 12, in his defense. The NYPD shot the bear, and now there's no more bears at that zoo. My older sister was a baby at the time, and my mom put a teddy bear in a toddler-sized Prospect Park Zoo t-shirt, stitched a shoelace to the corner of its mouth, and turned this into an instructional story about why we don't cross the fences at the zoo. Consequently, for decades, I thought she was making this up, until my sister found the New York Times article from when it happened. I'm glad the bears unionized and refused to work in those dangerous conditions. I've been around big cats in person outside of a zoo, and they don't require taunting to pounce on someone. Very special care must be taken in behaving and posturing in ways that discourage attacks. None of that is 100% deterrent, but to go and taunt them is like laying down on the railroad tracks. Who would invite death to the party, then be surprised when he comes knocking? A few weeks ago at my nearby amusement park, a man dropped his keys on a roller coaster. The worker said they could find them for him when the park closed. That wasn't good enough for him, I guess. So then he proceeded to climb over several fences with tons of signs saying danger and do not enter to try to get his keys, and was immediately hit by the coaster. A similar thing happened at Six Flags over Georgia back in like 2008 or 2009. The ride was one of those where you are seated and have over-the-shoulder restraints, but your legs are free and dangling. A guy jumped a fence to retrieve his hat. The ride came through, and one of the riders kicked the guy in the head. The guy got decapitated, and the rider shattered both of her legs. Same thing happens with people's phones. Yeah, it absolutely sucks to wait, but I'd rather wait than die. Drove home drunk, used the automatic garage door opener, and closed himself in the garage, car still running, then passed out. They found him in the morning when he didn't come to work. Penn Jillette of Penn and Teller tells a story from his single days wherein he drove home after the show, taking a cell phone call on the way. He got home, got out of the car, finished his call, did his bedtime routine, and went to bed. Problem 1, he neglected to turn off the car. Problem 2, his bedroom was directly above the garage. Obviously, he woke up feeling rather sick and eventually figured out what was happening. But he says that his friends would be arguing still today whether it was depression or stupidity had he died that night. Couple took their 4-month-old kid out in a boat in 120-degree F weather to celebrate the 4th of July. Kid died of heat exposure. Parents were surprised. And the parents have raised $50,000 so far on GoFundMe. Police have opened an investigation. I read about this. I really hope the police charge them for negligence. They cooked their poor baby and got rewarded $50,000 for it. A girl a few towns over was mooning a train, but was a little too close, and the train spanked her into the afterlife. I think it broke her spine and she died on impact or pretty quick, but I feel bad for the parents having to explain to people the embarrassing cause while also going through that grief. She was 16 or 17. I laughed so hard at spanked her into the afterlife. My God. I read a few times. I keep going back and rereading it. Some dad was playing a practical joke on his daughter and pretending to fall off the edge of the Grand Canyon. He lost his footing and fell for real. His daughter was now an orphan. She had no mom. What a complete moron and unnecessary death. When I was a child, a neighbor was a very bad husband and father, emotionally abusing his family. One of his tricks was, during a feat of anger, to dramatically stand in the garden and point his revolver at his head, at the last moment lift the barrel upward and shoot toward the sky. He did it from time to time, not frequently, but it happened. One day, he didn't lift the barrel high enough, and what happens when one plays with firearms happened. A kid at my high school died because him and his friends were taking turns hitting each other in the head with a skateboard. They just kept hitting each other harder and harder until they reached too hard and killed the kid. I did grow up in the time of Jackass, but I'll never understand this one. The husband of a friend of mine died by drowning at the beach. He was having an affair and skipped work to spend the day with his side chick. She could swim, he couldn't. They went to a local beach famous for its jetty that people love to jump off, despite all the warnings not to. He jumped and sank like a stone. His wife was unaware that he had been having an affair. My mom knew a woman whose husband died in one of the buildings that collapsed in the 1985 Mexico City earthquake. He was supposed to be in another city, but was actually banging his mistress, who also died in the earthquake. The government had to use a baseball stadium as a morgue, and the husband's body was found by accident by another person who was there looking for their relative, who then called the wife to alert her that her husband's body might be at the stadium. Despite her in-laws, who knew about the affair and helped him cover it, She never claimed the body, and he was buried in an unmarked common grave. This last detail may have been my mom exaggerating things. Why TF would someone, 1, go to a beach at all, and 2, jump off a jetty into open water if they can't fucking swim? What a moron. Feel bad for his wife though, damn. There's the airline pilot who let his kids fly the plane and the plane crashed. Took a bunch of people with him. If I remember correctly, both of his kids were in the cockpit where he was letting his son sit in the pilot seat and pretend to steer, thinking the autopilot was on, and something was locked so the kid couldn't actually affect anything. Apparently the kid was able to move the controls enough to disengage the autopilot, and nobody noticed right away, again because the distractions. And once they did, they tried to regain control of it, but couldn't. There's actually a really interesting animation showing the plane's movements through the air as they attempted to regain control and eventually crashed. I suspect my Nana accidentally poisoned herself with essential oils. She was always very fit and healthy, but as she got older, started getting into weird and kind of obnoxious health fads. One of them was essential oils, which a friend got her into. She was only in her early 70s when she died. About a year before her death, she started to get lots of symptoms like headaches and itchy skin, but the doctors couldn't pinpoint why. Then one day she got what everyone thought was a flu, but then she deteriorated rapidly. She went into hospital and was basically told, "You're dying and we don't know why." They couldn't do anything to stop it. Their plan was essentially let her die, then do an autopsy and maybe learn why. Her body just shut down over the next week. I live out of town, but came to be by her side, along with my family, for her death. After she died, everyone was back at my grandparents' house supporting my granddad. I noticed a bottle of eucalyptus oil in the kitchen next to the tea and coffee. Eucalyptus oil is poisonous to consume. I knew this because I'd recently gone down an online rabbit hole of MLMs, and specifically, people literally poisoning themselves and their families with essential oils. I mentioned it to my granddad, and the oil definitely wasn't his. Unfortunately, by that point, it was too late as the autopsy had already been done. Apparently, to check for poisons, they have to test for specific things, which they only do if they suspect a specific poison. We'll never know for sure, but I'm convinced. I went to a doTERRA sales pitch and ended up arguing with the woman who said you could ingest all the oils, including tansy. Tansy, or blue chamomile, is toxic and is also an abortifacient. Many of these essential oils are potent chemicals, and the salespeople don't know shit about them. I've heard someone died bungee jumping because they thought the staff said for the person to jump. Person's turn wasn't even up and was not even connected. I saw the video of this. Girl wanted to go with her boyfriend. She had backed out a couple times previously, but was determined to go through with it this time. It was off an old railroad bridge in South America, IRC. They waited for hours for tier turn. The staff strapped him up first, and she was going to be next. The staff told him to jump, but she mistakenly thought they were talking to her, and she leapt off the bridge instead. A neighbor went up on his roof to put up Christmas lights during a thunderstorm, at night alone. I never found out if he slipped, got hit by lightning or what, but he fell 3 fucking stories onto his driveway, and someone found him dead the next morning. I mean, does nobody remember Mr. Hands? Dude dies of perioitis due to the perforated colon he got from getting by a horse. Frat boy decided to pull a prank by climbing down another fraternity's chimney, unaware that they narrowed. He got stuck and suffocated, I think. His body was found when the other frat boys opened the fireplace flue and his shoes fell down. Guy dropped his keys in a manhole, went head in to retrieve them, fell in, and could not lift himself up. There was about 40 centimeters of water on the bottom. He drowned. Shit like this is why only a small amount of water can drown you. Getting stuck upside down is a problem. Sometimes you go head first, but then there is nothing to push off of to get back up, or it's too far. If there is nobody to pull you out, you will die. Even without water, being upside down for long periods of time is dangerous and even fatal. Some said it every episode of 101 Ways to Die. Cruise ship jumpers, poisonous, venomous spider, and snake collector that would let them freely roam his house. Edit. 1,000 Ways to Die. US girl was on a safari in Africa on a boat tour. Sign said, "Keep all hands in the boat due to crocs." Stuck her hand in water and was immediately grabbed and killed in front of her family. Was it one of those where a guy had Komodo dragons, and when he didn't turn up to work for 2 days, they went to his apartment and found him skeletal to the waist? The lizards having eaten him, but apparently couldn't get his genes off. That is honestly hilarious LMAO, like his pets may have killed him, but were foiled by some denim. A woman I know was running late for a party and decided that it would be better for her to wear open-toed shoes, but her nails weren't painted. So she started painting them while driving. Somehow she was successful in painting her left foot, but pulled the right one up and couldn't get it back down in time and couldn't turn the wheel. So she ran into the vehicle in front of her. Hold your wee for a wee. A 28-year-old woman died from water intoxication trying to get a game console with a list price of $250. The story about the utterly cavalier irresponsibility of the DJs who held the contest is particularly appalling. At one point, a nurse contacted the station and informed the DJs that the contest could be dangerous and potentially fatal. The DJs responded by saying, "We're aware of that," and said that the contestants had signed releases and couldn't file a lawsuit. Falling off cliffs while attempting to take a selfie. Sadly, this happens a lot. So many articles online, Google about this. Can't fix stupid. Some kids actually saw both their parents fall to their death this way. At the Pittsburgh Zoo, a mother held her 2-year-old up over a barrier above the African wild dogs, also known as Cape hunting dogs, habitat so he could see, and lost her grip on him. He fell into the habitat and was mauled and died. Why would you hold your child over a group of wild carnivores? A guy hated flies so much he tried developing a stronger version of fly paper. He put it on his wall, tripped, and got stuck. He died of dehydration because he couldn't get free and lived alone. One of my third cousins had a gender reveal party. Her husband accidentally made a pipe bomb that killed his mom. Now every time someone even so much as mentions a gender reveal, this is one of the first stories brought up. It was a boy. By the way, you've probably seen the video of this if you've ever used Instagram, but some old lady in 2012 died from taking a shopping cart onto an escalator and sorta turning into one of those snowballs in old cartoons and rolling downs. The grandfather of a guy I occasionally see at work events died when he climbed a tree to cut off a dead limb and was sitting on the limb he cut off. It explains a lot about my colleague, honestly. Dude was playing frisbee golf and accidentally tossed his disc in a lake in Florida. Dude went in the lake at night to get the disc. Gators. Another guy was running from the cops in Florida and decided a retention pond was a good place to hide. Turns out gators will live in any fresh body of water. This isn't the stupidest I've read on here, but a friend of mine died after falling down the stairs drunk. She was so fun to hang out with, and yes, she fell a bunch when she was drinking. It was always hilarious until it wasn't. Fucking stupid. I miss you, girl. Guy went to tailgate on this party bus, and they had modified it to have a flat top. He thought it would be fun to get drunk and party on top of the bus driving 40 miles per hour down the road. The bus went under a bridge, and not all his head made it to the other side. Lawyer who refused to remove his gun when going into the MRI room with his mom, MRI gets turned on, gun goes off, and shoots him in the gut. That guy who went to the remote cannibal tribe trying to teach them about Jesus. They killed him and ate him. I don't think that they were cannibals. They shot him with arrows and left the body. If you're talking about the guy who went to North Sentinel Island, they aren't cannibals. The British kidnapped some of their people back in the day, and even though they were brought back, not sure if all of them were returned though, any outsiders are now killed pretty quickly. It might have been just the kidnapping, but there's theories that we might have introduced some new diseases to the island that might have almost wiped them out, which makes their response to us a little bit more understandable. The thing is though, there were warnings about the island everywhere. It's illegal to go. The fisherman told him not to go. He went 2 or 3 times, and one time he was almost hit by a spear. The last time he went, he had no intention of coming back. Told the fisherman to not retrieve him. He was fully aware of the danger. I don't think anything could have saved him at that point. A guy was going to commit suicide. He covered himself in gasoline and lit himself on fire. He changed his mind, so he dropped and rolled. He rolled over a cliff and died. A friend of mine's brother died at a campground. The lot next to him were playing loud music till the early hours, so he went with snippers and cut the power cords. They found him the next morning with the snippers fused to his hand. He was an electrician. My neighbor's friend passed away last week. He choked on his steak. It's also just really sad, because he'd just been cleared of cancer. So his death just seemed like a stupid way to go. My son decided to hang out of the window of a Jeep while said Jeep was doing donuts in the sand. The car rolled. He survived about 20 minutes after. Took a spin around your profile and the sub you made for Sage. I mean this in the kindest way. It was absolutely gut-wrenching. The embarrassing and funny post with him were my favorite. So young and full of joy. I know he would appreciate every second you put into honoring him. Thank you for watching. Write comments, put likes. Do not forget to watch other videos.